Hi, I'm JJ. Welcome back. I'm going to do a quick Historathon wrap up with some of the books that I finished for quarter three. I had started Isabella, the Warrior Queen by Kristin Downey in quarter two because it started before 1500, but a majority of the big stuff takes place after 1500, so it fits nicely in here as well. I loved this book. There's a lot of stuff I just wanted to remember, fun facts. It delves into the whole history of Queen Isabella during that time period in Spain. So when I left off on my quarter two wrap up, I was just broaching the start of Christopher Columbus's expeditions and stuff. So it goes beyond that, starting with the Spanish Inquisition, and then it delves further because you get her family history with all of her children and stuff. And she's complex and not always good, but she is a fascinating person. So first off, I wanted to ask you, for those of you who know anything about chess, were you aware that the reason that the queen is the strongest piece on the board is because they changed the rules to honor Isabella? So she had won a victory. Spain at the time was really big into chess, and she won a victory against the Turks, the Ottoman Empire expansion, and they just freed a bunch of the Christian captives that they had there, and she was literally part of the logistics teams. She went there to like broker the end of the deal and everything like that. I believe she was responsible for most of the what we would consider like quartermaster type of stuff in the military, with supplies, rallying the troops, getting the troops, making sure all the logistics are planned and finished and run smoothly. And since there was so much war during her reign, she became very good at it, because first she had to, stop the, she fought to try to get herself on the throne, and then had to fight against her own brother, and then her own husband, his family and stuff, who also wanted it. And then once they were on the throne and she seated herself in Castile, then you had the Portuguese who wanted to come in and try to claim the throne from her, from that line, because she had, they were all related, and she also had Portuguese descent or ancestors. So she had to battle her own people. She had to battle Aragon and other districts within Spain. She had to battle Portuguese. She had to battle the Turks and Muslim invasions during the Crusading era. Then she also had inner conflict with a bunch of the conversos, which were converting from Judaism to Christianity, but some of them were not sincere in their conversion, and the Christians were getting really upset about being passed up for positions, especially positions within the church, with people who they felt didn't truly belong within Christianity anyway. So there was a lot of internal conflict as well, not just always having to fight against the Muslim invasion. She also fought against with the Jews. Not that she specifically was against them. She actually had several conversos who were her top advisors and religious leaders, but because of the internal conflict that she had to keep stopping these little civil wars and skirmishes that turned into wars within her own kingdom, she had to take a harder line against them. So, that's why it's called the warrior queen. It's like essentially her whole reign was some type of war or a prelude to war going on. So, that being said, they honored her by changing the rules of chess to make the queen the most powerful person on the board because of what she did for them as a country. And it picked up, and that is how we play chess now, with the queen being able to move any direction as much as she can, unless she's like hindered by another pawn or something on the board that would stop it. Otherwise, she can literally move the length of the board. And that was directly in response to her prowess and leadership as a war queen. And I just think that's fascinating that when we play chess, we don't even realize that rules were changed, and we're going by the rules in honor and recognition of a queen from, over 500 years ago. So I was gonna originally get the black one. That's always the one I like to play with, but I wasn't sure which one you would see better. So it's just a cheap chess set that I have. So in addition to all of that, which kind of leads into the Spanish Inquisition, as she didn't know how to stop all the infighting. And so she was listening to her religious leaders and her political advisors. And there has always been for worse, not for better, precedent where you need to control your population by controlling aspects of their lives, and so they wanted to have everybody convert to Christianity, but she wanted it legitimately. She, being very devout in a almost fanatical way, well, not even almost, in a fanatical way, she thought she was literally saving people's souls by having them properly convert. And so she thought by having conversion and having everybody the same, there would be no further infighting, so then she could focus on the other wars going on all around her and try to keep her nation safe. That was her intention, that obviously got out of hand, because anytime you single out a group of people, there are going to be people who use that as essentially a witch hunt. We've seen it for years and years, and so what the witch trials and stuff showed us, even which this predates that you have a hated group, and if you have an enemy, you just accuse them of being part of this hated group, and you get rid of them, and lots of times you get to claim their stuff, their land, their money, their inheritance, whatever. And it's no different than what happened here. Everybody started pointing the fingers. People who were legitimately Christians, even not conversos, but like legitimately born Christian, would be accused and then go on trial, and then often also get killed for it. It got way out of hand from what her intention had been. Not that she was right in doing it in the first place, but it didn't make things better when it was her husband who was using the guise of this religious conversion to get rid of all his enemies, his political rivals, and try to make up his own money, since the money that was, Castilian money, the money coming from the New World, stolen from the New World via Columbus and all the other people who were sent there to explore and convert, and then enhance the treasury, all went to Castile, because she's the one who financed the exploration, and she specifically wrote in there that it was Castile's. It wasn't her and Ferdinand's. It wasn't Castile and all of Spain. It wasn't Castile and Aragon. It was just Castile. And so Ferdinand wanted to make his own money, so he used and morphed and kind of got involved more within the Spanish Inquisition, which I found interesting. The other thing is, when Columbus first set sail, she gave them strict orders to treat any inhabitants there, so any indigenous people, kindly, Christianly, and tried to convert them, but don't do so with force or violence. And when she started getting sick, because she had illness for quite a long time, they think maybe it was cancer, but nobody's quite sure. She didn't get to spend as much time monitoring the goings on over in the West Indies, and so they started using more and more violence. They started expanding, and then after her death, Ferdinand didn't want to deal with it at all, so it just basically, you had a whole bunch of nobles there wanting to explore, wanting to make money, having no oversight, and being upset about the current population, and so much more happened after the initial explorations. And so what I found interesting is that's also the huge spread of syphilis that then affected all of Europe, mostly through Portuguese and Spanish exploration of the Americas, and then they called it the Spanish essentially disease, where one of the times it was the Spanish, and then it went through all of the royal households all through Europe, because everybody was having their their dalliances and affairs, and it ran rampant, and it killed a bunch of people. And when they first brought all the nobles to the New World wanting to explore and make a name for themselves, a bunch of them all ended up getting sick from all the different diseases that they weren't used to, the starvation, the mistreatment, and all that stuff, and they died there. That is not to take away from the fact that they brought all kinds of diseases to the Americas as well. But once there was no more nobles wanting to explore, they still wanted to fortify their colonies that they were building up there. So that's when they started sending like their undesirables, much like England did with the Americas and Australia as well. Criminals, the poor, just people that they didn't want to deal with. And so now they're there with, once again, no oversight, no rules, and once again things get even worse. So that was really interesting to read about. And then going back to Isabella's family. So as she's getting sicker and stuff, she's really trying to make sure her children are well off. And she already loses her first son and daughter very young, and her first grandchild, the heir to Castile. And that leads to a drastic change in her health, and she never really recovers from that. So now the oldest is Juana, who is in an abusive marriage to a king who wants her inheritance, and she has no way to stop or help that, because he is a king in his own right of Portugal, and they're already after all their wars together, when they got married, it was supposed to have this slight truce, and there's no way to extract her daughter from that and maintain that truce. So unfortunately, her life also contributed to her Isabella's stress. And so one of the final things that she was really wanting to do was get Catherine married off. She was supposed to marry Arthur, and they got married, and Arthur died, and now that's in limbo, and she wanted to make sure she was well off. So she sent the petition for a disposition. Disposition, I can't remember the word, to get the Pope's approval so that she could marry Henry the Eighth instead of anyone else. Henry the Seventh wanted to marry her for a while after his wife's death too, which I'm glad that didn't happen. Not that it was better for Catherine otherwise. So Catherine was waiting for this Pope approval, and then as soon as she got it, Isabella died shortly after. It was like she was holding out for that because she thought that that would set Catherine up and that she was protecting her, not knowing everything that was going to happen with Henry VIII in their marriage, and the divorce, and all the stuff that Catherine endured upon marrying Henry. So after Isabella died, Juana, she specifically had so many instructions in her will that were to the betterment of her children and all of Spain. But of course, that is not what Ferdinand did. Sorry about that. It's also very hot, so I'm like sweating here. He went against almost every one of her wishes in her will. He did not finish the dowries for the children. So Catherine lived in poverty a lot of the time while she was still waiting to marry Henry. And Juana was supposed to get stuff so that she could have her own money and income, so that she didn't have to rely on the way that her husband was withholding all of their funds and controlling her. So he didn't do anything to protect his own children. She wanted all of her, because she was huge into the arts and financed a lot of the arts, and she's basically made sure that all of her own stuff, her jewels and her art, would be sold, and the proceeds would then go to the poor. And a lot of she wanted to help the younger generation of women get educated and stuff, like she educated her daughters, but he sold them off for practically nothing, even though some of them were family heirlooms. Like, she commissioned big artists at the time to draw their family in portraits. So there's like different religious portraits that also have their family in. So my cats are very distracting. I'm going to see if I can find them quick, but I might not be able to. But it was really cool because she had them in all these different scenarios. So like This one, I don't even know if you can see it. I wish they weren't in black and white. But this is supposed to be the biblical story of Jesus' first miracle when he's at a wedding and he changes the water into wine. She actually had her son and daughter-in-law painted as the bride and groom of that wedding. And then this was the Sermon on the Mount in the Bible when Jesus spoke to thousands of people, and in the miracle of feeding them with just fish and a couple of fish and loaves of bread. And she has her family members kneeling down there listening to the sermon. And then there's Mother Mary, Mary the mother of Jesus, and she's sheltering Isabella and all of her family in this picture. And so she spent a lot of time and effort. Like I said, she was very, very religious. And she was so excited about collecting all these things and having her family part of it. And then he just sold them off as quickly as possible, as cheap as possible, so he could have the money. He didn't even follow her will to have them donated and stuff. So her remaining daughter-in-law bought as many as she could because she was in some of them. Plus, she shared Isabella's love for art and wanted to have them. She knew the importance of them. And so a lot of them, if they were saved because of her. And so now that some of them still get to be displayed in some of the palaces in Spain, but then other ones were from the collection, from her collection, are in different museums and stuff that were donated along the way or whatever. And then another thing that she wanted was to have like a private ceremony, like a very small one, and then have her daughter exhumed and buried next to her. And of course he put her like in the middle of like one of the churches and made this big to deal, and then never brought her daughter with her. So he didn't do anything except for make a mess of the rest of the kingdom, and then confine the daughter, who once again in the will she made Juana her heir, not her husband, but Juana, because she was the eldest child left. And she specified that she inherited, not Juana's husband. And of course, then the husband and the dad went to war with each other to try to claim the throne, and eventually had a truce in which they both declared Juana crazy and therefore unable to rule. And so the father was going to rule it in her name and then pass it on or whatever. But the husband died first. So then the father left her imprisoned for the remainder of her life, calling her crazy, so he could rule. And he did abysmally, because he ramped up the Spanish Inquisition. He did not have any kind of foresight in trying to stop all the atrocities that his people were committing upon the indigenous population in the Americas. He also did not know how to deal with logistics of the incoming wars. He didn't know how to run the finances and just everything that she handled and that he always wanted to be part of and never really knew what to do. So I just found the whole thing fascinating. It kind of gave a little bit more glimpse into understanding where and how the stories of Catherine and Juana get ruined later, and how, you know, we always in history have referred to Juana as the Mad Queen, or Juana the Loca. And so she was made a full person here, which I enjoyed. And you could see that with everything Isabella had going on, she did truly care about her family and was trying to do what was best for them. So, I don't know, very flawed, very controversial things that she went through and did. And when she died, though, even her enemies had to have, they did have respect for who she was as a queen and how she tried to run her country. She was formidable as an enemy, but she did try to take care of her people in the best way that she thought she understood. It's really hard to fully have a nuanced view of that, since there was, like I said, so many sides to this, so many wars, so many people hurt by the things that she did do or set into motion. So it's hard not to vilify her. So it was interesting to kind of glimpse the whole thing. I am sweating so bad here. I'm so sorry. The next two are not going to be very long. This is Tyrant. This is Shakespeare on politics. I found this interesting as well, especially when it talked about different specific characters within his plays and how they were used by him, but talking about it in a current political state as well. So the way he talked about madness is in here. I really liked that one chapter, as well as there was one about the resistance rising up against the tyrants and stuff like that. So I don't want to go into too much detail because I actually have at least one or two Shakespeare specific videos planned once I'm finishing reading through the plays that I wanted to discuss with it. But one of them will be about trauma, war, PTSD within Shakespeare characters within different plays that I have highlighted. And also I'm going to do one probably on mental illness or madness. The interesting thing, he does madness, but with King Lear, it almost also feels like Alzheimer's a bit, which is phenomenal if you think about it, for the time period that he wrote about it. So I do want to kind of talk about that. So the highlights that I have in here, I'm gonna wait to talk a little bit more specifically, but I did enjoy understanding, because there was some quotes that really hit with today's as well. A tyrant does not need to traffic in facts or supply evidence. He expects his accusation to be enough. With our political climate, it's easy to see where I got understood some of this. It is extremely difficult for people who've basically followed the person and now the person is a tyrant, or in this one is madness. It is extremely difficult for such people to counter madness-induced tyranny, both because it was unanticipated and because their long-term loyalty and trust have inoculated habits of obedience. So my glasses are fogging up because it's hot in here. But reading it, I saw a lot of how the things he pointed out back in the 1600s are still things that we're dealing with today. And I just really enjoyed understanding some of the characters in the plays better, some of their reactions, the depth of those who stood up against it, and how broken the ones who haven't became, and their inability to not only face the tyrant and stand up to them, but a lot of the times it was a like a, King Lear was a father figure. In The Winter's Tale, it was husband and son. I mean, the wife and the son not knowing how to handle the husband's sudden madness. And so I am looking forward to further exploring this with you guys and giving you my actual thoughts on some of those passages and plays. And then the last one I was very disappointed in. It's America's First World War. I was hoping that it would give me like the overview of the French and Indian War a little bit more, as well as essentially the French and English side trying to maintain their control in the Americas, in their colonies, but also since it was in 1754 to 1763, the fact that they were also having war in Europe against each other. I would have liked more information about that, as well as the after effects of this war, since French lost and English won. So then the colonies, this was, they were in control of the colonies for, less than 20 years before they rose up. The only part I found was interesting was the fact that when this war was going on, they tried to recruit the colonists, the colonizing people, the everyday people in this war, and they didn't want to do it. So Britain had to send in their soldiers to try to protect their, the colonies there, because it was their people being attacked at times, and then if they wanted expansion, they still needed to fight for that. And since the people in the colonies did not want to do the fighting themselves, Britain went broke trying to protect its territories and its people because of this war that they did not want to fight, but they wanted the protection and the extra land. So that is why they started taxing them more. And then the same people who elicited British help to get the French and the Indian off of their lands and to give them more autonomy and stuff, were the same ones that they rallied against later, because now they were being taxed. But they were being taxed because they're the ones who wanted the protection, and then England couldn't pay for it anymore, and taxed them for essentially, we came in here to help you because you asked for it, because you wouldn't do it yourselves, and so essentially now you have to pay us for it, and that's part of the reason for the raised taxes that the founding fathers rallied against. So that was the only part in here that I found interesting, because otherwise it was, it's written by somebody who's basically a reenactor, and so there's like all the photos in here are like reenactment photos, not actual photos of people, unless they're like paintings of the people being discussed. So it wasn't very academic, as well as the fact that it was literally detailed information about each fighting, like each battle, each skirmish, each thing that they, place that they went to, and like who fought, who died, what the terrain was like, and what weapons they had. Like, that was just that stuff that I was interested in. I wanted to know the actual political aspects of it, the sociological impact of it, and all that, and none of that was in here, so that was very disappointing. But at least I got my money's worth with the Isabella book. Anyway, that is it. I am extremely hot here with no air and no fan on, so I'm gonna call it a day. If you're made it this far, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. And as always, happy reading.